you saw it, well, I can't call it a milestone. This breakout, if you saw, is called what the gospel has to say when I feel like a failure as a parent. That might not be word for word, but it's like the basic gist of what we're going to be talking about in this milestone. So, before we even get started into the meat, I just want to tell you kind of like what the goals are that I have for this breakout session. And I'll tell you like kind of how I came to wanting to even do this breakout session. When I decided that I wanted to see if I could teach this session, I think I had lofty goals that I wanted to answer. What does the gospel have to say to someone who feels like they're failing as a parent? Because that's the way that I feel most of the time. I feel a lot of the time in parenting like I carry this, it's almost like a weight or like just a weight on my shoulders that I go through my parenting where I feel like I haven't been good enough. I should be better. I should know what to do more. This should be more natural for me. I should be able to do this better. And so I thought, if I feel this, I'll bet there are some other people that can relate, or they have people in their lives that they know that can relate. So I wanted to talk about it. And so I had to pick the title before I actually got into the meat of what I wanted to say. So I had some lofty goals for like, oh yeah, I'm going to like answer this theologically, and I'm going to come up with this like wonderful theological case for exactly what the gospel has to say. But then I got into the meat of it, and I just realized this is such a part of who I am as a person and a part of who I am as a parent that I was like, I can't give a theological answer. I can't give a complete answer. So I have some things to throw out there. I have 2 ways to live as a parent that I'm going to present to you guys, but I don't have like this wonderful answer that's like, this is the theological answer that will fix feeling like a failure as a parent forever. Because I don't have that, and I feel like I'm still muddling through this. I don't know if you guys know how it works with the different people that teach the milestone pathway breakout sessions, but originally what it was supposed to look like was that there would be a parent who would be in that age range with children, with kids in that age range. So for example, Caleb and I have kids that are in the 2 to 5 age range. And then if you teach that breakout session, you're not supposed to be an expert in it. You're not supposed to know everything about that milestone, but you're supposed to be a researcher, like a learner, going through that process. And then you present at the Parent Summit kind of what you've researched throughout the year and then give more resources. And that's kind of like what I had in my mind for this breakout session, because I definitely feel like I am a researcher in feeling like I am a failure as a parent. That is just something that is just a part of how I grew up as a little girl and what I carried into parenting. And so I feel like, I just want to get that out there. That's just something that I feel like I'm right in the middle of it. I'm still kind of throwing it off of me, and it's still something that I haven't quite figured out, and I haven't quite thrown it off of me. So I feel like I'm kind of like that in that like milestone presenter kind of thing where I'm researching it, and I'm not an expert in it, but I'm just bringing where I'm at and what I've learned. So, that being said, how many of you guys were in Greg's sermon last week? A lot of you guys. Basically, I couldn't believe that he preached last week. This is basically what he preached last week is what I would like to talk to you guys about today and talk to myself about. So he talked last week about, on Saturday and Sunday, that all of life, you can look at it, there's a mentality where you can look at life where all of life is a lot of different situations where you go into the situation and you're either passing or you're failing. And it could be a conversation where you're having a conversation with someone and you think, did I do good enough? Did I pass or did I fail? It's a mentality. And that's kind of like what I'm talking about. It's like this mentality where you feel like you have to be perfect enough to prove that there's not something wrong with you, that there's not something defective about you, that there's not something not good enough about you, that you have to prove that you're okay. And that's kind of like how I approach parenting. I feel like there's just all these situations where your kids come with issues. They come with defiance. They come with disobedience. They come with whatever it is. They come with their childlikeness, just being a child. And it's all these situations where you have to prove that you are perfect enough, that there's not something wrong with you, that you have to measure up. And so what I'm talking about is the feeling of feeling like there's been enough situations where you've failed, where you haven't known what to do, where you haven't been good enough that you could say, I'm a failure. Like, I don't know what to do. My kids are out of control. They're unruly. They're not. You could describe it in lots of different ways. You could say I haven't been loving enough for them. I haven't been caring enough for them. My kids are not successful enough. They haven't achieved a certain standard that I've put up for them, and so it's my fault because I haven't been able to help them achieve that standard. You could say my kids. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. That I haven't done everything right. You could put it in that terminology. So anyway, I'm going to use for that particular feeling, of feeling like a failure, I'm going to use the word to describe it. I'm going to use the word shame. For me, that's a really helpful word. It just puts a label on what I'm talking about, and I'm going to give you a definition for it. Shame is I am not enough. Shame is I should be better. And we're going to add to that a little bit later. So we're talking about this in the realm of parenting, and basically it's kind of like the idea of I don't know what to do, and I should be better. I should know what to do. I should know how to handle my kids. I should know what to do in this situation, and because I don't, I'm a failure, or there's something wrong with me, or there's something defective about me, or there's something that is not quite what it should be. It doesn't reach up to a certain standard. So I would just like to say a couple things before I say a couple more things about shame. We're going to talk about this later. We're going to get into this a lot later. But in God's eyes, I'd just like to put this out before we jump into all of this. In God's eyes, even actual failure, so we're talking about the feeling of failure, right? But actual failure, like actually doing the wrong thing as a parent, making the mistakes, and actual failure, in God's eyes, doesn't actually equal failure, if that makes sense. God is so much bigger than our failure, and His ways are so much more complex and convoluted, and they go in such a different route than the straight line that we think. We think perfect equals success, but in God's eyes, He uses failure, He uses mess, He uses brokenness, He uses all of that to achieve His goals. So I would just like to say that. We're going to get into that later, but just as we start, I just wanted to put that out there. The second thing I'd like to say is when I use the word shame, there's an appropriate way to feel shame, and there is an inappropriate way to feel shame. There's a healthy way to feel shame, and there's an unhealthy way to feel shame. So a healthy way to feel shame and an appropriate way to feel shame is like, I'm broken, I'm sinful, I know I'm a mess as a parent, I know that I fail, I yelled at my kids yesterday, like that was not right. Jesus, I have not lived up to the standard of holiness that you asked me to. Like, I bring my brokenness, I bring my mess, I bring the way that I have not lived up to your standards. Could you cleanse me? Could you wash me? Could you teach me? That's appropriate shame. That's good shame. But I'm talking about inappropriate shame or unhealthy shame, which is like that weight of saying, it's proven that my imperfection is disqualifying, that I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, that my lack of knowing what to do has put the label on me as a parent as I'm a bad parent, or I'm a less than parent, or other people are better than me parent kind of thing, that my inability is a bad thing kind of thing, that perfection is out there, and because I couldn't attain perfection, other people can attain perfection. I can't, and because of that, that means there's something wrong with me, that I should be something else. I should be better. That's inappropriate shame. And then the third thing I'd want to say is the other thing about appropriate shame is I'm talking about the feeling of failure. There are things that parents do that are wrong, that are inappropriate, that parents should feel ashamed about, and then that would fall into the realm of appropriate shame. So I'm not talking about abuse. I'm not talking about sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse. Those are things that parents should feel ashamed about, and that's appropriate. That's good for parents to feel ashamed about that and then to get help. So if that is your experience, like if you have stepped out of line in appropriateness in the way that you have disciplined your child, or like interacted with your child in a way that like diapers should be involved or something, and that's shameful for you, I wouldn't want you to take what I'm talking about today and say, oh, I shouldn't be ashamed of that. My inability is good. Jesus covers that, blah, blah, blah. Please don't take that. Take that. If that's your situation, that's also okay, but it's appropriate to feel ashamed about it and get some help. Talk to a pastor, talk to a counselor. The end. Okay. So, this feeling of not being good enough, it is intensely painful. It's a painful feeling. Let me tell you, and I can say that because I feel that, and it feels disqualifying. It feels like everybody else knows how to do the parenting thing, and I don't. And that my kids are the proof that they're when they act out in front of other people, that it's because of me, that it's my fault, that I should have been better, and it's very painful. So the way that I process shame is really is the way that I process it, obviously, and it's unique to me, and I'm sure certain people are like me, but I'm sure other people are different than me. So I'd like to just throw out some ways. If you're not necessarily connecting to the way that I'm describing shame, I just like to describe it in other ways because you might not process cognitively like me. For me, when I put a label on what I was experiencing, when I said, oh, what I'm experiencing is shame, when I put a word to it, then I was like, all right, now I can go. Like, now I can, start thinking about it, dealing with it, put words to it. It made sense to me. But not everybody deals with shame that way. Some people just act on it, and they don't even know, because they're an action-based person, they don't even know I'm dealing with shame. So I'm going to try and describe it a little bit so maybe you can connect with other examples if you're not connecting necessarily with what I'm saying. Okay. Shame can feel like being embarrassed of being seen as I really am. So, can even be as simple as my car. Like, I have felt like our car is a mess. It's disgusting. Like, it really is. It has dirt. It has, like, this much of, like, kids' toys, like, laying on the bottom on the floor by where the kids climb in. I just never clean it out. That's just not me. So my personality, I know that I should, I don't. And so I have had people at church, you know, like, come over to, like, say hi to us or whatever. We roll down the window, and I, in that moment, feel that intense feeling of shame that I should be better, or I'm not enough, and I don't want to be seen. I don't want them to see me in my mess. Not wanting to be seen can also look like never wanting to let anybody in. It can look like feeling really defensive about my parenting, so not wanting to, like, let a pastor in or let a mentor in, or not ever letting anyone speak into my parenting. It can be, like, ultra defensive about a parenting decision. You can see that a lot in the baby years, like when people latch on to a certain method of parenting a baby, and then they will defend that to the bitter end. A lot of that is not necessarily even philosophy-based. It's basically shame-based, because they feel like I have to defend this method that I have chosen to prove that I'm good enough, that I shouldn't be. It's not that I shouldn't be better. Another way that you can experience shame is asking for people to give you grace, or asking to not be judged. So if you can find yourself saying, like, oh, please don't judge me for how out of order my kids are, or please don't judge me for how messy my house is when someone comes to your house unexpected, or please, if you show up if you're, like, out shopping and you're, like, in your PJs or something, and you see someone you know and you're like, oh, please don't judge me that I'm out in my PJs and I look crazy. It's like you have to let them know before they judge you that you know that you're a mess or something. It's like this, like, it's this weird exchange of, like, trying to let them know that you know that you're on top of it, kind of thing. So, for me, like I said, shame for me is very cognitive. I deal with it cognitively. So when I had Ava, when I first became a mom, I would literally think things like, I'm not cut out for this. Like, I would go through parenting and I'd be like, whoa, this is not, I expected this to be natural. It's not natural. It's a lot harder than I expected. And then I would make literal conclusions in my mind where I would think, I just must not be cut out to be a parent. Like everyone else can do this, but I just must not have it in me. I'm not cut out to be a mom. Shame can look like comparing to other people and deciding that other people are better parents. Shame can look, another conclusion that's cognitive for me is that I'm ruining my family. That if my kids had, like, a different parent or a better version of me, that they wouldn't have problems, that they wouldn't have the issues that they have. But it's me that I'm ruining our family. So an action-based thing about shame can be simply withdrawing from parenting. So if you see, like, for example, imagine a dad that is just like, I'm just going to go watch TV, or I'm going to watch sports, or I'm going to, whatever. Withdrawing can be a symptom of shame, because it can be like, I don't know what to do, and I feel like I'm not good enough. I feel like there's something wrong with me, and I'm not going to confront that. I'm just going to withdraw. I'm just going to be like, I can't confront my not good enoughness, so I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm just going to completely take myself out of the equation. Shame can look like blaming your kids. So it can be getting really angry at their disobedience or defiance or whatever. but really you're really angry at your lack of knowing what to do. Greg did a really great illustration of that on Sunday. He said he had that example of ShopRite and your kid throwing a tantrum.
You have no idea. Right after that, Hayden did it.
Oh my gosh!
Full-blown screaming, kicking.
You're like, oh, I know.
That's the kind of thing.
Yes, so it's like that feeling of like they're doing something that is like they're being a child, they're throwing a tantrum, and you're embarrassed. And so then you want to lash out at them to like discharge the feeling of feeling like you're so ashamed of their behavior because you feel like if I had been a better parent, if I had been better, if I had not been not enough, they wouldn't be doing this kind of thing. The other thing, two other things I would want to say is shame can look like, I find this one really interesting, shame can look like rolling your eyes at other people who you think are doing it better. Like, it's like a defense mechanism of being like, oh, that person, like, I don't know how to describe it, but I can sense it, so maybe I won't try to describe it too much more, but it's like a defense mechanism of being like, I'm not, like, to putting out this vibe that I'm not trying hard, and that person is really trying, and they're an idiot for trying. It's like trying to, like, I don't know, it's trying to, like, be like, they're actually the idiot for trying, and I'm actually, inside I'm embarrassed that I'm not better, but I'm going to make them look like the idiot because they're trying, and instead of taking it on me that I should be trying harder or something, like I think inside that I should be trying harder, but I'm actually going to pretend like I don't care, and then I'm going to pretend that the person that I think is trying harder is an idiot, kind of thing. It's very complicated, but anyway. And then the last one that I think you can see shame in parenting is this one, is like all me, is obsessive thoughts with no action. So I'm going to give you the example of food. I have a sister-in-law who is very food conscious, and she's extremely healthy to the point of like, I'm like, wow, she is almost like overly healthy, and I am just I'm not very knowledgeable in the area of food. So whenever I'm around her, I start thinking, wow, I suck at like feeding myself and feeding my kids, and all my problems are related to my not knowing what to do about food. And like, I start thinking things like I'm fat and all my health problems are related to food, and if I could just get this one thing right, if I could just get food right, then all our problems would be solved. So I start strategizing like how I'm just going to like do this crazy health thing and I'm going to do everything right, but I never take any steps to do anything actually healthy. It's just all these obsessive thoughts about how I'm going to do all these healthy steps for our family. We're going to only eat like, chia seeds and nuts, and that's all we're ever going to eat. We're going to eat nothing else. But I never do anything about it. We just continue eating. Yeah. We continue eating flour and dairy, and we
Can
continue.
I tell you something funny?
Yes, go ahead.
So the other night I was at marching band practice, and I was talking with another mom, and God bless her, but she is just, she doesn't like medicine, and she's changed her diet radically to handle these diseases. So she got off on this tangent about yellow dye and macaroni and cheese, Kraft macaroni and cheese, right? And I'm not making fun of her, because for her it was a huge thing. I mean, she got her boys off the processed foods and the dyes and stuff, and she has a son who's autistic and another one who's borderline, and their behavior improved dramatically when they got off the fast food, the processed stuff.
Yes.
But she was so, she wasn't preaching it, but it was like it's what she believes.
Yeah.
So I'm standing there listening to her, trying to be supportive and thinking, girl, I got 18 boxes of Kraft macaroni and cheese in my cabinet because my sister just went to BJ's and got us the big box.
Right.
And every time, I made it for dinner last night, Sarah, every time I open one of those boxes, I now feel guilty.
Yes. Yes.
And she wasn't trying to say, no, but she's just one of these people. And so, darn it, last night before the play, we needed dinner real fast, so I threw a ham steak, I made instant mashed potatoes, I made, as I'm opening the box, I'm seeing her face.
Yes. And
So it's not just you.
You probably feel more than guilty, because guilty is like, I did something bad, but shame is like, I am bad. So you probably feel more like,
I shouldn't be giving my kids this.
yeah, like, and so anyway, yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So, before we move on, so that's one way I'm describing how it is to live as a parent. That's one option, one mindset. Before I get into talking about the second option for living as a parent, I'm going to give you this little worksheet, ding, 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 for you to do. You're going to do the first 2 pages. It's the first 2 pages of just the front and the back, just for you to kind of access. The first one says, how do you feel as a parent? I'm talking about feeling. I am not, a lot of times we talk about like, what is the word? Objective. I'm not talking objectively. I'm not talking like exactly like rate yourself like, do you really think you do a good job as a parent? I'm talking how do you feel about yourself as a parent. So I'm talking subjectively completely here. Like, we're talking emotions. So on a scale of, I feel like a failure. I feel like I'm failing. This makes sense to me. Or on the opposite end of the spectrum, I feel pretty confident that I'm leading my kids on a good path. Like, I'm not perfect, but I feel like I'm leading my kids on a good path. I'm pretty confident I know what I'm doing. How would you rank the way that you feel? So remember, this is about how you feel about yourself. And a side note, of course, leading my kids on a good path encompasses mistakes, not knowing what to do at times, but the general pattern is that you feel pretty confident. Also, please note that some people simply don't have the same feelings about themselves as a parent as I do. That's okay. My husband, Caleb, for example, would probably circle all the way at the end of, I feel very confident about the way I'm leading our family, whereas I would circle, I feel like it's proven that I am failing. Same kids, same family, same children's behavior, but I would conclude I'm failing. Caleb would conclude, I'm confident we're doing a great job. It's subjective. It's feelings. So, circle them. Yes. All right, second page. Then you're going to turn it over. What? Some of you will like it. Some of you will just be like, whatever. I'm not doing this. I hate it. Draw a picture. What is your mental picture of yourself as a parent? Draw a picture of how you feel as a parent in your daily routine. What do you picture yourself as a parent? Like, do you picture your kids, like, clawing you? Do you picture yourself, like, paralyzed? Do you picture you, like, just, like, fast-paced? Like, what do you feel like? What does your face look like? What are you doing? What's surrounding you? Where are your kids? This can be very, like, stick figure-ish. I don't care. If you want to use some colors, there's some colors right there. You don't have to. At the bottom, take a good look at your picture. Now write some descriptive words underneath that picture that describe how you feel about yourself as a parent. You're not sharing this with anyone. This is just for yourself. Go for it.
Oh, okay.
it's a fight you gotta afford. You belong to me, whatever you do. Lay down your weapon, darling, take a deep breath and believe that I love you. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Gotta learn to love, learn to love, learn to love your enemies. Gotta learn to love, learn to love, learn to love your enemies too.
All right, that is all the time that we're going to have for that. Thank you for taking time to do that. You can keep that for yourself. You can think about that if you want. You can process that later with whoever you want. Yourself, the Lord, a friend, a spouse, whatever. All right. So, one way to parent. Life is lots of situations of passing, failing, having to be perfect enough to prove that you are not defective or failing. All right? Let's talk about the opposite, another way to live. So this is where the whole gospel mentality comes in. But first I'm going to give you a little example, little story this week. I had a tough week with Ava. She's 6 now. And I'm going to tell you the first part of the story, and then after I'm done explaining the mindset change, then I'll tell you kind of how the mindset change looks for me. So, Ava and Bethany were playing in their room earlier this week, and I could hear them starting to fight, which is not unusual. And Bethany came running into me, which is also not unusual. And Ava came, once she heard Bethany come running in, then Ava came running in crying, which is also not unusual, because she knows she did something a little bit wrong and was going to get in trouble. So when they were starting to fight, I could hear Ava saying something about, to Bethany, she was saying something about, I have to think about if I'm going to play anymore. And I wasn't quite sure what she was saying. But anyway, so Bethany came in and she explained the situation that they were playing with their doll's houses. And there was a camper, a little doll's house camper. And they both wanted the camper. Bethany had the camper, a little blue camper. And Bethany had the camper. And once Ava saw that Bethany had the camper, Ava wanted the camper. So she asked Bethany for it, and Bethany said, no, maybe in a little while, and play with it for a while. So Ava started saying to Bethany, okay, well, I'm going to think about if I'm going to play. I have to think about it. I have to decide. So Bethany, being the little sister, it's very important to her that Ava plays with her. You can imagine little siblings love to have the big sibling play with them. So it's that's a big, what Ava was saying is big for her, because she's like, I really want you to play with me. So Bethany comes in to tell me this, and she says, I have the camper, Ava wants the camper, and then Ava comes crying. I don't know what her defense was going to be, why she was going to say she was crying, but I said, go, sit in your room, I'm going to talk to Bethany. So anyway, so then I go into the room with them, and I start talking to them about sharing and how I'm going to set a timer on my phone, and we're going to make it fair for both girls, and so how 5 minutes Bethany's going to have the camper and 5 minutes Ava's going to have the camper, because that's something that we do frequently in our house. I set the timer when they can't really, decide about sharing a toy. But Ava is sitting there like this. as I'm explaining this, and she's like, I don't want to share that camper. I want it just for myself. I don't want to do the timer. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, you are getting something good because Bethany had the camper this whole time. Like, you're going to get a turn with the camper. I can't understand why you are still being upset about this camper. You're getting a turn. Like, I'm offering you a good solution here. Anyway, it was the morning time, so we had to take Caleb to work, and we only have one car, so we all piled into the car, and I said to Caleb, can you help us sort this out, because I'm kind of beyond my resources here. So I explained to him what was happening, and he was like, well, sounds like you were trying to deal with the situation at a level 1 problem, sharing. Dealing like it's just a sharing problem. But it's actually a level 4 or 5 problem, because without words, Ava had introduced some meanness into the situation, because without words, she was saying to Bethany, unless you give me that camper, I'm not playing with you. And if you give me the camper, I'm going to play with you. But if you don't give me that camper, I'm not playing with you. So you have to address the situation at the level 5, because you're not dealing, if you address it at level 1, you're not dealing with what really happened. You got to deal with what really happened. Address it at the level 5, then you'll find that you'll deal with her heart, her face will change, her attitude will change. So anyway, he gets out of the car and goes to work, and I start trying to address it at that level with Ava. She was just beyond obstinate at that point. I tried to go the method of helping her say that she was disappointed, that she was sad, that she had said something mean without words, and she was having none of it. So anyway, this all escalated to the point where she was just screaming at me and like turning away in her chair when I was trying to talk to her. Like she was having a fit. And I picked her up to put her in a timeout, and she dropped her body weight so that I couldn't like pick her up. And anyway, just lots of defiance. And so I told her to put her hand in mine, and she was like pulling her hand away. So then I gave her a firm speech about keeping her hand in mine, and she said, I wasn't pulling my hand away. I was just leaning back in my chair. So just like, and she's typically not like that too, so I was just kind of like, what? So anyway, this is what our week was like. So Caleb came home after school. So anyway, I chose to deal with that situation during the day and fun with them. But I chose to try and go a grace route. I tried to go like, Ava, you've made lots of mistakes today. You've chosen the wrong way, and Mommy makes those mistakes too. And you know what? I choose the wrong way, and that's why Jesus came. That's why Jesus came. And you know what? We can't obey on our own, and I need help too. And I make mistakes. I chose to be like, and Mommy loves you no matter what. And all this grace, like that's what I chose to kind of deal with it. And it didn't quite feel quite right, but I thought, I'm doing a good job. I'm like using grace. This is a good parenting strategy. So Caleb comes home after school and he says, so how did it all work out with the situation this morning? So I explained my grace route. He's like, wow, okay. So I'm hearing that she was incredibly defiant, which took it from level 4 issue to a level 8 issue. And that's like in the danger realm. She's bringing danger into our family. She's bringing us into a dangerous place. And you didn't deal with the danger. You kept it at like a level 4, level 1 situation. You didn't deal with the danger. You tried to just kind of like grace over it and say, it's okay. But if you don't deal with that defiance, if you don't deal with that disobedience, it's just going to keep happening. She's going to be like, oh, this is okay. I can do this. So I was like, oh my gosh. Are you serious? And then I was also thinking, if you deal with the defiance, then it's going to negate everything that I just said about grace. If you come in and you're like, Ava, you know. But anyway, so we were at my in-laws that night, and so she had to be in a room by herself for the whole dinner time. And just to let her know without words, this was very serious. This was very, it was unacceptable. She was outside of the circle of blessing, that she was in a dangerous place, and that some things had to be done to show her the unacceptableness of what had happened. Anyway, so that's my little story. And so my mindset, I just want to show you like the difference of what my mindset could be. In those moments, that was an actual failure. That's not a huge failure. It's not like anything big, but in that moment, I have the option of being like, that is a parenting failure. I'm a failure. I don't know how to deal with my kids. I am not enough. I should be better. I should know how to deal with my kids, and I don't. I'm a failure. But because I've been studying all this, I felt like I had another option. And so what I'm going to describe for you guys is the other option, and then I'll tell you how it kind of works out for me. All right? So the major thing that I would want to say of the other way of parenting is parenting does not have to be a measuring stick all the time to say if I'm good enough or not, or to prove that I'm not enough. Parenting can be not about a measuring stick, but it can be about training. So let me explain what I'm talking about with that. So shame, I'm not enough, I should be better, that all says that there's lots of shoulds for me and for my kids in parenting. So like basically my kids shouldn't be bratty, they shouldn't be difficult, they shouldn't be disobedient. I should know how to parent wisely, I should know how to parent well, and I should be able to do it all on my own. That I should be emotionally stable, that I shouldn't be like angry, I shouldn't be ever depressed, I shouldn't ever be like tired, I shouldn't ever be irritated at my kids, that I should be emotionally stable, all these shoulds, and that I should know what to do instantly, that I should never like be paralyzed by situations, that I should know in the moment like, oh, this is the consequence, that I should know what to do. But a training mindset in parenting, which is the opposite of shame, this is just so much better, because a training mindset says, first of all, for kids are not this like little, kids are not these like little provers of my worth as a person, my worth as a parent. Kids are children. They need correction. They need parenting. And so there's not these shoulds for what they should be. Actually, you know what they should be? Children should be, this is terrible, I can't believe I'm going to say this. Children should be bratty. They should be disobedient at times. Not all the time, but at times. Because they are little sinners. They are evil. They are, sinful from birth. That's who they are. They have a sin nature. And they need a parent. They need a corrector. They need a shepherd. They shouldn't be perfect, especially we have in our minds that our kids should be perfect without being trained, without being taught. They should not be. That is just like a weight that we put on kids that is just like ridiculous. They should be people that are sinners, just like us. So they're children. So instead of wasting time with being like, my kid shouldn't be this way, and it proves that I'm just not good enough. No, I think what we should do is we should be like, this is the reality. This is who they are. This is where they're at. This is what they're doing. This is the defiance that they're showing. This is the disobedience. This is the confusion. that they're experiencing, and this is where I need to correct them. This is where I need to train them. This is where I need to love them. This is where I need to meet them. So children need a parent. So parenting is about training moments. It's like children are who they are is not who they will be, and they need you to be the conduit of moving them into who they will be one day. And it's the same for us as parents. Parenting is a conduit of moving us into something that we are not yet. So right now, we don't know what to do. We sometimes feel unable. We sometimes feel like we're not enough, but we're being changed into something else. And while our kids are being trained, we ourselves are also being trained. We're being made into something that we currently are not. So the Bible says, actually, that we are being made into the bride of Christ corporately. That there's going to be a time that we're going to be presented to Jesus as the bride of Christ, that we're going to be spotless and pure and white, that Jesus will have washed us completely clean. He's going to be presented us. He's not saying that right now we have to be that, and that like, oh my gosh, shame because we aren't that. He's saying, no, you're a mess now. You're dirty. You're flawed. And I am washing you, and parenting is one of the ways that I am washing you and that I'm changing you and I'm working you into something that you currently are not yet. So yeah, I just think like we put so much pressure on our children to already be, just to carry the weight of our shame and our worth. And we say like, you better, we don't say it with words, but without words we say, you better prove that I'm a good enough parent. You better prove that I am not shameful. And like they can't carry the weight of that because they're children. They're little people. They can't carry that weight. We have to look at them and say, you know what? You're a sinner, and I need to train you. Parenting is not about me proving anything. It's just about me meeting you where you are and training you to the best of my ability. I would like to say about training, most of us don't know how to train our kids. And a suggestion that I'd like to say about that is what Brandon was saying. Like, reach out for help. Ask somebody how to train your kids. So, secondly, parenting is not about proving that you are good enough. Parenting is a place where our inability, our not knowing what to do, is not a bad thing because it proves that we are not enough. It's actually a good thing. Our inability, not knowing what to do, is a good thing. I'm going to read you a little passage from this Paul Tripp book. I'd highly recommend it to anyone who is interested. Let's see. All right. It's a little section that says, God never calls us to a task without giving us what we need to do it. So, check out what he has to say about this that is talking about my inability is a good thing. God never sends you into anything without going with you. He never tells you to do something without giving you what you need to do it. This is the story of the whole Bible. This is why God sent his son to earth. There's only one hero in the Bible. Every other character is flawed in some way. God is the hero of every story in the Bible. In fact, the Bible is not a collection of stories, but one big story with lots of chapters. It's the story of how God meets weak and failing people with his powerful grace. What does this have to do with parenting? Everything. It means that if you are God's child, it is impossible for you to be left to your own limited package of resources. It's impossible for you to be relegated to whatever size is the strength of your wisdom, whatever is the size of your strength and wisdom. And here's what you need to remind yourself of every day. God's greatest and most wonderful gift to you as a parent is himself. He knows how hard your task is. He knows that it drives you beyond the borders of your patience and wisdom. He knows that there are times when you feel like you have no clue what you're doing. He knows there are moments when you wish you could quit and walk away. He knows there are moments when anger grips you. He knows that your children can get under your skin. He knew what every piece of your struggle would be as a parent. So he knew that the only thing that would help you would be himself. Here is the single redemptive reality right here, right now, that makes parenting possible. God in you. So, our inability is good, and you know what? I think what Paul Tripp is saying here is that it's okay that we are unable. It's okay that we're like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, and I come to the end of my rope. I come to the end of my ability all the time. That's okay because God says that he has provided himself to live inside of us, and he's pretty happy with that reality. He's like, he is the fountain of all wisdom, the fountain of all strength, the fountain of all everything that we need, and he says that he actually comes to live inside of us. I, a while ago, wrote a blog post about this, and I was talking about how when I first became a mom, I realized that motherhood was so hard, and I thought that it was so hard because there was something wrong with me. So I'm going to read you what I wrote about that, okay? So I wrote, so often I have concluded that the reason that motherhood is hard is because there's something wrong with me. You wouldn't believe the number of times I've cried to my husband, you know what, I just don't think I'm cut out to be a mother. I don't think I can do this. But that, pardon me, that conclusion is so wrong. And yet, in one way, that conclusion is so right. Let me tell you what I mean. Motherhood is so hard for a reason, and the reason is not that I suck at motherhood. Motherhood is not hard because I suck at motherhood and am the only woman who can't handle it. It's not because I'm not good enough. It wouldn't be easier if I was better, if I was more perfect. It's hard for all of us for a purpose. I'd wager a guess that God has lots of reasons that motherhood is hard, but I'll take a stab at 2 reasons. The first is that he loves to bring us to those places of, I don't think I can do this. I don't have what it takes. You might think, wait, that seems a little mean. God loves to take us to a desperate place of, I don't think I can do this. Yes, I think he does, because I think he loves bringing us to a place where we cry out to him, where we realize that he is our only hope, places where we are in touch with our need for him. I remember when I was 26 years old and realized for the first time that was a monumental part of why Jesus came, because I can't do a good enough job on my own. I put so much stress on myself to do good enough, perform well enough, handle it all on my own. But Jesus came because I can't, and he can. He can give me what I need to live righteously, to love when I don't have what it takes, to give when I don't feel like giving anymore. Strength and a fountain of all that we need for those of us who just don't have what it takes. He loves to bring us to a place of recognizing our neediness, of crying out to him, and then showing up as the strong one, the rock, the refuge, the one who has what it takes and is willing to share his resources with us, the needy. So I think, what I'm trying to get at is like, Jesus loves that place of our inability. He loves that place of us feeling like I don't have what it takes. I'm not good enough. I don't know what to do, because he says, guess what? Like, you don't have what it takes, and I do. And he loves to be exalted as the one that shows up shows up when we feel like we're at the end of our rope. So like if you think of the story in the Old Testament where there was that widow and Elijah went to her house and he said, make me, I don't know, bread or something like that. He said, make me bread. And she said, I don't have enough to make you bread. Like, I'm going to make this meal for me and my son, and then we're going to die. And he said, just obey. Just make this meal for me, and you'll be okay. And so she did. She used her oil and flour or whatever, and she made him bread. And then after that, the story goes that her oil and her bread or whatever she used to make, it didn't run out. It just kept on, she kept on having enough. She didn't have a storehouse. She didn't have a barn full of little cakes of bread or whatever they looked like at that time period. She had a little bit. The jar didn't run out. And that's kind of like what God's provision in parenting in this area of training feels like. That's what inability and looking to Jesus in parenting feels like. It's like if you didn't have food in modern days for your family, to feed your family, and you didn't know where to look and you didn't know what to do. I don't think God would say, well, here's ShopRite. I'll give you a whole ShopRite. I think God would say, you don't have food for your family? Like, I'm going to provide and someone's going to give you $15. Or out of the blue, someone's going to leave a bag of groceries on your back step. Or maybe someone is going to give you a gift card to ShopRite. It's like the little trickles of provision that it still feels like you're kind of in a desperate place and you don't quite still know what to do and you're still kind of on the edge, but you're being provided for. I don't know if you guys remember Nate one time used the phrase God's hand to our mouth. And that's kind of like hand to mouth. That's what God's provision in parenting feels like. It feels like we're unable, we have this inability thing, but God shows up, his showing up feels like, it doesn't feel like a waterfall, but it feels like the little moments of him living inside of us, but you have to do that turning to him where you're like, I don't have enough, I don't have the patience, I don't have the wisdom, I don't know what to do. And then you turn and you say, Jesus, you do, and you live inside of me. Can you help? And he shows up, but it feels like just enough for the moment. It's like just a little bit. So, and I think that is opposite of shame, because shame is like, I should be better. And then this training mindset or inability mindset inability is good mindset says like, because my inability is good, I have nothing to prove, and my inability is an okay place for me, and I know that the Lord will provide what I need. So going back, the last thing I'll tell you is the last thing that I will tell you is I would just like to refer quickly to I'll tell you two quick things before we're done and before I pray for us. I would like to just reference for you too. So there's those couple of stories that I just mentioned, and I just also like to mention the story of in the New Testament when Jesus fed the 5,000. That is my favorite story for switching from a shame mindset to a training mindset in parenting. Because, so if you think of that story, the need was so great, right? So there was no food. There was 5,000 people, plus women and children, right? The need was huge, and that's what it feels like to be a parent, right? The need is astronomical. The stakes are high. Our kids' lives are so precious. We care a lot. The need is so high. And in that story, it's just so beautiful to me. In that story, who feeds? Who is the one that offers the food? It's not even a responsible adult. It's a child. So I love thinking of myself in that role as a parent, as that little child. So like, so Jesus is like, who's going to feed all these people, and who comes forward? Like, who's going to help this need? It's a little child that comes forward. And I love thinking that I don't have to be like this wonderful, perfect, expert, know-it-all, like, know how to do it person. I can be like that little child in parenting my kids. Like, a childlike place is okay to be. I can be in the training mindset and be like, if this isn't, my inability is an okay place. I can be very small. I can be very, like, not knowing what to do, and that's okay. So the child comes, and they have very small thing to offer, but Jesus takes the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and he thanks the Father for the gift, right? He thanks God for it. I think that's what Jesus does when he looks at our parenting. He thanks God for it. He thanks God for our little offering. And then Jesus, of course, we know he multiplies it, right? So our little offering, when done, not in the mindset of shame, not in the mindset of proving, but in the mindset of like faithfully trying to train, Jesus, he multiplies it. And I love this next thought, is who is the one who feeds? Who's the one who fed? It wasn't the child, right? Jesus was the one who fed. So it wasn't up to the child to feed everyone. It wasn't up to the child to take care of the need. It was up to Jesus to take care of the need. It was his job. So it is my role to try and to be faithful and to be the parent to step into the role of mother, but it's not my job ultimately to feed all the needs that I see. It's my role to look to Jesus to feed. So, yes. And then just in terms of what it looks like in that story with Ava, with all her disobedience, and then Caleb stepping in and saying, like, you should have addressed it at a level 4, you should have addressed it at a level 8. And my option in that moment, if you go back to that moment with me, my option in that moment is to be like, oh, like I should have done enough, I should have been better, I'm not enough, I should have been a better parent, I don't know how to deal with my kids. Or I can look at it and just be like, oh, well, this is really enlightening. Like, thanks, Caleb. This is really helpful. And, like, can you help me, like, think through, like, how I can do that more with the girls? Like, I didn't realize, like, I have to deal with disobedience and defiance there. Like, what are some strategies that I can learn to deal with defiance at a defiance level? So that's just a suggestion that I have for you. When you move out of the shame realm of parenting, then you're in an arena of being able to actually learn and grow and develop instead of just always having to prove. When you're in the shame realm, you can't even grow because you're always trying to prove. But when you move into the training mindset of like, it's about training for me, it's about training for my kids, then there's opportunity for growth and for learning new ways to parent. So, that is it. There are some suggestions on the 3rd page, I think, of potential practical ways that you can kind of work this out in your parenting. It's just some brainstorming off the top of my head. And if you're interested in more resources, the last page are resources that I find just incredibly helpful in dealing with the issue of shame if you're more interested in researching. Thank you for coming. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
The end.